So, let's talk about the preamble to the Indian Constitution. I know. It might sound like some dusty old legal text, but trust me, it's not. Think of it as the foundational design, the master blueprint for the world's largest democracy.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. How on earth do you even start to design a nation for over 1 billion people? With all that history, all that diversity, it's a massive challenge, right?
Well, the answer the framers of the Constitution landed on was actually pretty elegant. You start with a blueprint, a really clear, really powerful statement of intent that guides literally everything else.
Okay, so let's pop the hood and decode this blueprint. We're going to get right into the preamble's core promise and break down the exact words that define what the Indian state is supposed to be.
It all kicks off with probably the most important phrase in the whole document: "We, the people of India." This is huge. This isn't some decree handed down by a king or a foreign power. It's saying loud and clear that the authority for this entire constitution comes directly from its citizens. That's what we call popular sovereignty.
And using that authority, the people decided to create a nation built on these 5 key ideas. So let's unpack what each of these powerful words actually means in this context.
First off, sovereign. This one's pretty straightforward, but it is absolutely fundamental. It just means India is its own boss. Completely independent, no outside power gets to call the shots, the country has the full and total authority to govern itself. End of story.
Next is socialist. Now this one's interesting because the word was added later, in 1976, and people debate its meaning. But in the Indian context, it's not about the state owning everything. It's more of a deep commitment to reducing those huge gaps in wealth and social status and making sure the government is actively working for the well-being of all its people.
Then we have secular. For a country with the kind of religious diversity India has, this is a cornerstone. It means the government doesn't have an official religion, period. It has to treat every single faith with equal respect and protect everyone's freedom to believe or not believe whatever they choose.
Democratic. Okay, this one is the beating heart of the whole system. The government is chosen by the people. It's all based on universal adult franchise, which is just a fancy way of saying every adult citizen gets a vote and has a say in who's in charge.
And finally, republic. Now, you might think this is the same as being democratic, but there's a key difference. A country like the UK is a democracy, but it has a monarch. A republic means the head of state, in India's case the president, is an elected official. Power isn't something you inherit, it's given by the people.
And what's really fascinating is that this blueprint has actually evolved. The original preamble was adopted back in 1949, but then, decades later, in 1976, the 42nd Amendment came along and officially added the words socialist and secular, basically doubling down on these values as essential to the nation's identity.
Okay, so we've covered what the state is, but what does this blueprint promise to do for its citizens? Well, beyond defining itself, the preamble lays out 4 huge promises, 4 foundational pillars for every single person in India.
These are the big 4. Think of them as the pillars holding up the entire building: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the ultimate goals, the whole point of the blueprint.
And these words mean so much more than you might think. When the preamble talks about justice, it's not just about what happens in a courtroom. It's talking about social, economic, and political fairness for all. And liberty isn't just a vague idea of freedom. It specifically guarantees the freedom of your thoughts, your expression, your beliefs, your faith, and your worship.
It's the same with the other 2. Equality means a real commitment to equal status and opportunity for everyone, and it strictly forbids discrimination. And then there's fraternity, this really powerful idea of a common sense of brotherhood, of national unity, that also respects the dignity of every single individual. In a country so diverse, that's absolutely essential.
So you have to wonder, right? Where did all these amazing ideas come from? A document this profound doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Let's take a quick look at some of the architectural inspirations, the global and local ideas that got mixed into the ink.
The framers were smart. They looked all over the world. That iconic call for liberty, equality, fraternity, that was inspired by the French Revolution. The idea of guaranteeing fundamental rights drew a lot from the U.S. Constitution. The principles that guide state policy, those were influenced by Ireland. And of course, you can't talk about this without mentioning the incredible Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who championed social justice and made sure it was woven into the very DNA of the Constitution.
So that brings us to the big question. This was all written over 70 years ago. Does it still matter today?
Or is it just a historical artifact? Let's talk about the preamble as a living, breathing document that's still very much in use.
You really need to know about the year 1973. This was a massive turning point. In a landmark case, Keshavananda Bharathi, the Supreme Court of India made a huge ruling. They said the preamble is an integral, inseparable part of the Constitution's basic structure. And what that means is that its core principles, the very soul of the document, can't be changed or removed by any government ever. It is the ultimate safeguard.
And because it's so protected, it has real teeth today. It acts as a moral compass for the government. It's the guide that courts use when they have to interpret laws and our fundamental rights. It's basically a shield that protects the country's secular and democratic fabric from any misuse of power. It's still doing its job.
Which leaves us with one final really important question to think about. A blueprint, at the end of the day, is only as good as the building you make from it. So, when you look at India today, do you think the nation is still being built according to its original foundational blueprint? That's something worth reflecting on.